Hello, everybody.
Om Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Om. Namaste. Welcome. Satsang Tripura. This beautiful Gita, this beautiful song about Brahman, the self. So we have seen last class that story, about all the rishis, and then Brahman came and asked them to take it easy, and then he made it clear that Brahman is the only source of knowledge, and explained the apparent difference among the rishis, the yanis, but explained as well that self-knowledge is one and the same. And the source of knowledge, meaning to say the scriptures, is the true source of knowledge. So if one feels inclined to help others, one better sticks to the teachings according to the scriptures rather than start develop my own teaching. My teaching is better than the other, and so on. Just goes through the process of education, and then unfold the teachings which were revealed to us. So we have seen it all last, and with a lot of beautiful insights, profound, some of them very subtle. And that brought us to the verse 68 says, if emancipation was something out there in the world, it would imply fear of loss. See, if the freedom that we search for would be to be found outside there, because we know that in the world, the phenomenal world, anything that is gained is lost. So if we get a certain freedom, emancipation, moksha, which is not inherent to my very, very intrinsic nature, but is something that is out there in the world, the fear of losing it is always there. That's why yoga, for no matter how wonderful we experience, we access, through certain states of samadhi, it's always the fact that, because if you find yourself in a beautiful mental state, immediately there is a voice out there. So how can I keep it? How can I keep it? How can I keep it? So the fear of loss would be there, because a beautiful, mystical, spiritual state of samadhi is something exterior to yourself. What does that mean? That it's happened to me. I am aware of that object, meaning to say a certain mental state. My mind is an object, and all the mental states are objects that occur to me, the light of consciousness in which everything appears, changes, and disappears. So if it was moksha was to be found on something out there, more precise, on a mental state, it would be the fact that with the fear of loss, which is inherent to any punya we acquire in the world. And for a true seeker of moksha, it would not be worth aspiring to. Moksha, in truth, is fearlessness, and the only fearless principle there is in our one nature, in our very nature, which is one without a second. So the moment that there are two, there is always some fear, because the other is going to be there, and then there are two egos, and then you never trust the other. As James often says, watch out with people because they always have an agenda. So there is always fear. But if you are yourself alone, the only reality, you are fearless, because there is nothing external to you, the self. So that's where the fearlessness, the fear of death, fear of adversity comes from. When one is, properly established in consciousness as consciousness, that which never changes, is never not present. And then those fears which apply to the body-mind, they are minimized. They are extensively minimized. And if they appear, they quickly, they are seen as another residual or remnants of ignorance that is discarded by the young, as we have seen it in the past. Verse 71, it is certainly the primal state of the knower, consciousness, and it's always there. This is moksha, this is supreme wisdom, supreme intelligence, consciousness. Is the primal, the most fundamental nature of the knower, but it remains unrecognized for lack of certain qualities, which allows us to get acquainted with it. You have to be familiarized with yourself. What self? At the most, I can try to be familiarized with my mind, my thoughts, and then I try to manipulate and change or improve them. But the self, so you need to have a qualified mind, very subtle, in order to recognize this reflection of consciousness, which is never not present, enlivening the body-mind complex and moving it around. So it remains unrecognized for lack of purity and acquaintance with it. Therefore, we need a guru and we need the scriptures. The guru and the scriptures alone can help the individual to acquainted with the self, to make acquaintance with the self. Any doubt about that? No, we need to look at these scriptures from every angle until we understand that it's all the time, through all the three states, and all other altered states, this self, this light of consciousness, which allows us to experience this dualistic apparent order of reality, is there. And it's the only reality above all. The self is abstract intelligence, free from thought. The knower, knowledge, and known are not real as different entities. So it appears that there are three factors: the knower, the object of knowledge, and a certain understanding in respect to that object. There are three factors, but this trinity, it all resolves in one principle, which is consciousness. There are no different principles or entities. When differentiation among them is destroyed by understanding that all these three factors resolve themselves in consciousness, which somehow appears as in duality as the knower of the known object, which is collecting knowledge. And a lot of those knowledge are not proper knowledge, beginning from the fact that there is a certain knowledge that objects are real, and they serve the purpose of complete myself. The differentiation is destroyed when these three factors collapse in consciousness as consciousness. Their nature is evident in the resulting non-dual consciousness, which is also the state of emancipation, freedom. We are only free as consciousness. The body-mind is never really free. The body-mind can enjoy a certain bonus of freedom, but freedom is only found in non-dual consciousness. And then the body-mind who knows that enjoys a certain sense of freedom, of moksha, of emancipation, which is inherent to consciousness, because The Yan has recognized that consciousness is its true essential nature, immortal. There is, in fact, no differentiation among the knower, known, and knowledge. The difference are simply conventions retained for smooth working transaction. In earthly life, we have this fundamental duality, the knower and the known. Life is all about that. Consciousness of non-dual nature, due to the trick of Maya, appears before a world, a universe of objects, and then consciousness becomes the knower and the known, and the known object. But this differentiation is destroyed. Not that it stops appearing like that, but the yani does not fall for that, as does the anyani. In fact, the yani never falls for that in truth. This is emancipation. There is, in fact, no differentiation. Emancipation is eternal. It's eternal. It was always there. And therefore, here and now, it's nothing to be acquired. Again, realization, moksha, emancipation, freedom. Tell me when we were never free. We are always ever free. But somehow we have placed our sense of identity on that which is not free, which is the body. And the mind, when it's attached to the body, identified the body, is absolutely bound, suffering. So the mind, when it's attached to its true nature as consciousness, the mind is free. So the body-mind complex enjoys a interesting sort of moksha, freedom, because the body is still attached to one's karma. The mind is free because it has identified with the spirit. So only consciousness, the spirit, is free, and we have always been. There was never time that we are not free. Okay. The cycle of births and deaths endures with all the apparent reality of a mountain, so long as this manifestation lasts. As soon as the manifestations realize to consist of the self and the self alone, without any admixture of the non-self, the cycle of birth and death comes to a standstill, and it's broken down to fragments like clouds dispersed by strong winds. Very beautiful. As soon as we understand clearly that I, the seer, the true knower, the true experiencer, as conscious existence, am the only free and independent reality, and the entire universe is but a superimposition of nama-rupas, in the same way the ornaments of gold are superimposed on gold. So I am the self, pure limitless consciousness. The nama-rupas are the non-self. The gold is the self. The ornaments, the forms, the shapes, they are the not self. They are just a superimposition. So once that vision is clear, the cycle of birth and death comes to a standstill. So those wrong notions, which compels the Jivatma to identify with the not self, is gone, broken into pieces like fragments of ignorance, which disperse and disappear. Thus you find that earnestness is the only requisite for emancipation. Here he presents that the best, the most important qualification or requisite for emancipation is longing for emancipation, intense, unwavering desire for self-knowledge. So I'm inclined, I tend to say that this is the most important requisite, burning, intense desire to realize directly my true nature in consciousness as consciousness. This longing is the best qualification. What is the use of hundreds of efforts in the absence of this desire for moksha? That is the sole requisite and nothing else. I totally agree. I have been presenting, stating my opinion that this is the most important requisition or qualification. And why? Because my other qualifications were not very good. And I had this one working for me. You understand? I never had a very focused mind, which was my weakest point. You know? This passion was happening as I was suffering so much in life. I was saying, no, enough, no, enough. I need to discover something that puts an end to this suffering, but I don't want to commit suicidal, because I understood that I will come back exactly where I left it. Intense devotion signifies mental abstraction as the devotee loses himself in the desired object. So now he's presenting the intense desire, intense and unwavering desire for self-knowledge is the most important requisite. And now he brings the concept of devotion. So what is this intense desire to know yourself as the self, as consciousness, free? Is there a higher devotion than this one? No? It's devotion. Understand? Now that's why Ramana said, love, knowledge and devotion, they are like two wings of the same bird. So you need to have intense knowledge to know. And this knowledge is going to make you the highest devotee. You're devote to what? I'm devote in the earlier stage to Saguna Brahman, in the later stage to myself as Nirguna Brahman. When the desire is so intense, the devotee loses himself in the object of desire. Isn't it? We get lost sometimes on an object of desire. And most commonly when one falls in love and you want so much the other, and then you forget about yourself. You became obsessed for a certain object, meaning to say my loved one. But how about, devotion to Brahman is devotion to my own self. It's a non-dual devotion. So there is no desired object because, I am the subject here. I'm not an object. So I'm tired of being devoted to my not self object. Not self is the body-mind. Now I understood the true self is not the body-mind. Now my devotion goes to the self, and the self is the absolute subject, not any object such as the body-mind. So now I'm devoted to the self. And my mind is merging to the self as the self. I'm losing myself into my search for myself as pure limitless consciousness. So you see how this whole thing goes about from Saguna to Nirguna, and then for Brahman to Brahman, myself, I, myself. And then comes a point that I don't have an object of desire anymore, because I realize that I am, my very nature is what I'm searching for. Duality is collapsing there, Then in this particular instance, emancipation takes place. The last tendencies to search for the self as something other than your very self is consumed, is destroyed. You understood so clearly that you are the self. You understood the teachings of the Upanishads. You understood that the self is nirguna, is free of any and all qualities or attributes. is that on which Maya projects attributes to bring about the universe. So that way, that moment, emancipation takes place. Such unwavering devotion, longing, desire for knowing oneself must certainly succeed, and success in only a question of time. So beautiful, so truthful. Every time I read certain statements in this Tripura, I feel like copying and then translating and then posting to my people in Brazil, because they are so profound, insightful. And it's a subject that I like very much because it is the very moment of understanding, final understanding. So if that unwavering love, devotion for knowing the self is so strong, and then success is only a question of time. And time could be a few days, a few weeks, a few months. And then the author here saying could be even next birth. Take it easy. There is no hurry. Depends on how purified our vasanas are. Because the vasanas are going to say, go to the world as well. Invest in the world. Okay? Search for security and then pleasures, entertainment, and other things in the world, and search for self-knowledge, self-investigation, self-knowledge, but don't invest everything in the same basket. So those tendencies, these predispositions, those vasanas, when they are very dense, they are going to leak some of the energy which is necessary for bringing about mumukshutva. Now we have a certain limit of time and energy at our disposal. When we are not really so sure that self-knowledge is the only remedy for this human condition, we waste some energies here and there. And then it may take a few years until maturity further develops, or even another birth.
Arlindo, I've been thinking when we were going through this is the downside of sattva. Because you can get stuck there and lose that obsession with freedom. Like you had the great good fortune of being stuck in some ghastly stuff so that you had to get out. And now just being sattva can be really a horrible guna to bind one.
Yes, you can be bound by punya in another language. I have a good life, so I'm okay. I'm attached, but I enjoy it. Or you can be attached in a sattvic mental state, which produce a great peace. That is something even more better than material punya or circumstantial punya. So, but the mature seeker, it understands the value of self-knowledge as the only remedy for the problem. People, they understand after all that, okay, why am I going to be stuck in sattva, in punya, if I know that that punya or that sattva change, the punya is going to be exhausted, you understand? Because I can control the field of experience. I can control my gunas, my mental state. So it is easy to be stuck there. But I have to say something more to my credit. So when the whole process was unfolding in my mind, I was experiencing good states, very nice mental states, sattva. But somehow life has brought into my hands a book which was stating clearly the difference between knowledge and experience. When I read that, it exploded in my mind, and immediately I said, no more, I don't want it anymore, because I was already beginning to experience a frustration that when I move away from my efforts to go into samadhi, my mind changed. And then again, I was experiencing mental suffering, disturbance. So
Your microphone's off, Linda.
my internet here is good, but sometimes it has been dropping. It's very fast, 50, 60 megabytes. I'm going to pass to the one which goes about 87, but it's stable, more stable, has been more stable lately. Let me change it. You see, Lynn, you say that, oh, it's so easy to be stuck. But if you're aware that to be stuck is not the answer, so that's not a problem for you. Anybody who understands these teachings knows to be attached to punya, to be attached to mental sattvic states,
Yeah, I've already gone through this once when I was, years and years with meditation, and I was always blissful. And I just got to the point where I said, it's same old bliss. What's going on? Something more, please.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's getting to that stage again now with the understanding. It's frustrating.
Yes, you want to be free from the pair of opposites, pleasure and pain, being the fundamental, because it's the experience. We experience the world, and so we experience it as pleasurable or painful. We want to try to experience only pleasure, but it's impossible because the mind changed and the world changed. The punya, the parabhata changed as well. So maturity is the key here. So what is the use of hundreds of efforts in the absence of mumukshutva, the desire for self-knowledge and moksha? Intense devotion signifies mental abstractions as the devotee loses itself and so on, which may take days, months, or years. The intellect is ordinarily befooled by evil propensities, and so nothing good flourishes there. Consequently, people are boiled in this setting cauldron of birth and death. Oh, a very dramatic picture here. I got the sense. So you are going to burn in samsara, more births, more deaths, more agony, and because the intellect, the mind, is programmed. Thoughts are programmed by our previous experience and the knowledge we have acquired through experiencing life. If we don't submit your programmed mind to the ultimate program, which is the Vedanta, the Upanishad program, so your propensities, your vasanas, your tendencies are going to be like any other samsari with small difference. But basically, I believe in the world, in the realities of the world, and I know the solution is out there in the not self. So these tendencies remain there, and they flourish again and again, producing new births. So this is the nature of the mind. It's not an easy process to uproot all these hardwired tendencies. It requires, there's no shortcut in spiritual development. It requires this process of self-investigation in the light of the teachings of Vedanta, teachings of the scriptures. Of these evil propensities or hardwired obstacles, the first is lack of faith in the revelations. We have seen this concept already. So the first is, I don't trust the scriptures or the guru. I want to be my inner guru. Have you heard of Sadhguru? Oh, no, guru? No. I am my guru. I believe in Sadhguru. Everybody has a guru inside oneself. lack of understanding. Everybody is the self, the same self, but everybody has a unique mind. And if you don't take the scriptures that come together in a package with the guru, you're going to be just living your life governed by your subconscious mind, vasanas, and your conscious mind, which is highly influenced by your vasanas. So the progress is possible without the scripture and guru, yes, but it's very, very rare and much more difficult. So the second propensity or vasana or difficulty is addiction to desires. I want what I want, when I want. So we are talking about lack of faith in the scriptures. The ego say, no, I am my own guru. I don't accept. The ego is so rudimentary, that cannot accept. It's so delusional. Yesterday, I gave a long interview to a guy who has a platform and a website in which he teaches people in a kind of interesting way, a small system, very creative, but just small fragments of Yana Yoga with a lot of bits and pieces of his own interpretation, creative ignorance, So, and people, beginning from him, they don't even imagine, it does not even come close to one's mind, the idea that I need help, because I'm offering help, I open my shop, I offer help, I need help, I need the scriptures, In the end, last question after 2 hours, he said, okay, my last question for you is, I have my teachings, I have my system here in my school, and you teach Vedanta. So Vedanta is a tradition, So what is the tradition and why the tradition should be better than my system, So I had to be very careful, but not to hurt him because his audience was there. But a tradition is something that survives millennia and works always, ever. And it's a complete, not bits and pieces of fragment knowledge mixed up with ignorance. But I couldn't say much. I said, this is tradition. There are traditions that, this restaurant is traditional, 20 years open, tradition, 20 years of tradition. So our tradition is, beginningless tradition. From the beginning of times, there is this revelation in regards to the nature of the spirit, available to all Jivatmas contemplate to understand the very nature of the universe. So the first is, I don't need a guru, I don't need anything. Furthermore, I'm teaching now, the second of these ones, as he says, is desires. And I want what I want, which represents excess of Rajaguna. And the third is excess of Tamaguna, dullness. I can't understand these teachings. So again, I'm repeating myself, but this is a brief statement of these three propensities, as we have seen before. Of this, lack of faith is betrayed by one's doubts regarding the truth of the statements of the scriptures, by failure of understanding them or lack of qualification that allows me to understand. The doubt arrives whether there is moksha, and later misunderstandings leads to its denials. So the initial doubt is, I don't want to have any guru or scripture because I'm very smart. The second, but I heard that there is such a thing as liberation, moksha. Self-knowledge brings as a byproduct liberation, moksha. And then the person give it a try of a few days, few weeks, few months, and then you see nothing has changed so far. And then I start doubting that there is such a thing as self-knowledge, which takes one to liberation. And then because I doubt, because I've not experienced after a few months or years, yeah, I start interpreting it on my own because I have rejected the scripture knowledge and the teacher. And then I deny, oh, this is people delusional. These Yanis and those, they talk about freedom and moksha and liberation. And they are delusional. So this comes together, this doubt. They are huge obstacles to any effort. So people nowadays, they heard that there is something as enlightenment or self-knowledge, and they get involved with all kinds of BS, you know, and they believe that somehow it may be a good shortcut to take me there. So you can put out so much effort, you know, but you're never going to get there because you are barking the wrong tree, as we say. Yeah. All obstacles are set at not by a determined belief in the contrary, that there is no such a thing as moksha. That is to say, a determined belief regarding the existence of moksha will destroy both certainty and misunderstanding. So what do you need? You need to develop a value for self-inquiry, self-knowledge, as the only means to liberate the individual from suffering. How are you going to develop this? This trust, this value, which you will destroy all your mistrust. So only Shwara knows. My take is that only grace, and grace is something that comes in relation to Jiva Atma and Ishwara. Ishwara is not going to provide anybody with this trust value to the scriptures, because it depends upon the person coming to a point of understanding that nothing that he does is resolving his or her problems, and then he start going back to the scriptures gradually, and then start developing a value for scriptural knowledge. But the question arises, how this determined belief will be possible when faith is lacking? Yes, exactly. So how is it going to be happening? You need faith in the scriptures to develop a value for self-inquiry and moksha. And you have to have a value for self-inquiry in order to have faith. And then where is this grace coming from? So we may say grace comes from nobody knows where, because it comes from past effort, from previous births. Many times you don't know where that kind of punya, spiritual punya, is coming from. If they are fructifying from this lifetime efforts or even several others. So where is it coming from? What is the root? Lack of faith has its root in unfavorable logic. Give it up and take the approved logic found in the scriptures as expounded by your guru. So, have you ever seen a guy, a person suffering from enlightenment sickness and totally wrapped up in illogical concepts that somehow please the image he has of himself and he presents to the world? So have you ever seen somebody give up that ego and say, okay, my logic is inferior to the logic of the guru in the scripture? Sure, it's difficult. So this maturity, these pre-qualifications, as I often present, humbleness, humility, and patience and trust, it's a slow process. So, but one has to abandon the idea that my logic is better than the logic of the scriptures. My understanding is superior from the understanding of Vedanta, like this guy who interviewed me yesterday evening. I said, no, I have my own system. And most of these people, they find that their system are superior to the Vedanta, complete, extensive body of knowledge, teaching methodology. They find, no, that's old stuff. Or the ego is wrapped up in this, in these limited logics, full of flaws, and so this propensity is hard to be uprooted. Only God knows what we do to deserve humility, humbleness, so that we surrender to the scriptures. Only God knows. The second propensity, namely desire, prevents the intellect from following the right pursuit. For the mind engrossed in desire cannot engage in the spiritual pursuit, of course. So if I begin trust a little bit the scriptures and the guru or whatever, but I'm still engrossed in too much desire, worldly desires, So I'm following two contradictory paths. Our mind is too much engrossed in desires, and then it's going to be experiencing a lot of mental disturbance regarding to the impossible mission of controlling the field of objects to gain my objects of desires, unless one becomes a serious karma yogi. Otherwise, I can't engage in a spiritual pursuit. The abstraction of a lover is well known to all. He can hear or see nothing in front of him, only his beloved one. Anything said in his hearing is as good as not said, because the mind is consumed by one's object of desire. So if you have desires for the world, the not self, and you have a desire for self-knowledge, ultimately we have to understand that those are contradictory desires, you understand? And we need to reduce the desire for the not self to the practical day-to-day needs, of life. It should be reduced just for, yes, so I'm not going to neglect my needs on the not self level, but I keep it to the minimum. And those desires are no longer desires. What are they? Necessities. Okay, I don't have desire for physical thing. I have necessity. Yes, what necessity? So I need a car, for example, because I live far away. I need a house. I need food, and I like good health food. So I have some necessities, which is different from desire in this context. Therefore, the desire for not self must be first overcome before aspiring for spiritual attainment. That can be done only by the development of this passion, and this passion needs a profound understanding of the nature of Mithya, the nature of Satya. If I have a good understanding of the nature of Mithya, and then I begin developing this passion, big time, nothing in Mithya is going to really provide me with the security, peace, and satisfaction. So this comes together with this passion. This passion does not come just by trying to detach from the world at any cost, by the means of controlling the mind. I don't want the world appearing in my mind. It needs to be done by understanding the world to be Mithya, and then you develop this passion in spite of the presence of the world. This propensity of desire is manifold, being in the form of love, in the forms of love, anger, greed, pride. So this propensity, this vasana for the not self, is the source of the illness the sickness of samsara, which is a long list of mental, emotional states which destroys the mind, after all. Desires, attachment, expectation, frustration, love and hate, greed, pride, jealous, it's anger. The worst of them is pursuit of pleasure. So of all objects of desire, Dattatreya here says that worst of them is the one of sensory pleasure. It is very nice. Because you can have desire for things relate to psychological relative security, or you can have desire for self-improvement. None of these hurts, unless you believe that by gaining security, which is impossible, gaining perfect purification or improvement, that would free you. No, it does not free, and it's impossible because it's not really there in the world. Security and purity is something relative as well. But if you are still attached to entertainment or pleasures, desire for pleasure, security, pleasure is the worst desire. Why? Because you're going to live guided by sense pleasure. You want to consume experience that provide you with sensory pleasures. So here, Dattatreya says that is the worst of all. Why? Because if you're pursuing objects that gives you instant gratification, instant pleasure, such as sex and food and many others, so you are all the time reinforcing. You're just feeding and making this desire, which is sensory pleasure, bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then you are totally bound to it. And he goes beyond and he says, if you manage to destroy this pursuit of sensory pleasure, you end up destroying all other attachments, all other objects of desire. But you have to begin with the tougher one, which is desire for instant pleasure, sensory pleasure. And pleasure may be subtle or gross, neither of these must be indulged even in thought. Fantasies of pleasure that gives me some moda or pramoda, priya, moda, when it's mental. And then once I get my object of sensory pleasure, and then I enjoy myself greatly. But we know that this pleasure is very defected. Pleasure may be gross and subtle. As soon as the thought of pleasure arises, it must be dismissed by the willpower developed by this passion. Beautiful. So when we know our weakness, we know our tendencies that somehow cause suffering. As soon as those thoughts appear, I want what I want this and that, because it's going to give me pleasure, satisfaction. It must be dismissed before I feed into it. And how am I going to do that? And that is where it comes, the willpower. We need willpower, and we need understanding. Willpower together with understanding develops what? This passion. To develop this passion only with willpower is impossible. Develop this passion only with understanding is also impossible, because some verses are so powerful that you're going to have to rely on your willpower to say, no, not again. I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to feed these thoughts. I'm not going to come close to this or that object. In this way, the second evil propensity, which is desire, can be overcome. The third, known as tamaguna, dullness, resulting from a mind that was destroyed by violation of Dharma over and over again, preceding this birth, many, many births. The person comes already with a totally tamasic mind. The illness is so deeply rooted in the causal body, in the unconscious mind. The person does not understand where that suffering is coming. What is producing this depression, this suffering, is so deeply rooted in the causal body that you can connect with it, All you know is that you feel miserable and depressed all the time, and you don't have any motivation in life. Dullness results by innumerable wicked actions in preceding births, is the worst of this series and the hardest to overcome, tamoguna, the hardest to overcome by one's own effort. It's so difficult, it's so pity. I know people here in Brazil that come close a little bit, and they don't stand any chance, and they are so depressed, they are so messed up, so confused. And I know that the causal body, the unconscious mind, is a mess there, and Vedanta is not going to help. And I can't tell them that Vedanta is not going to help. And then I say, try Kama Yoga, but then often I say, just do some therapy, do some bioenergetic, do some pilates, or start moving your body, trying to break this solid block of tamaguna, and do things energetically so that some of these things sitting in your subconscious mind, which are paralyzing you, can come to the surface. Vedanta is not going to help. Concentration of mind and understanding of the truth as revealed by the scriptures are not available for these people. For as long as dullness prevails, there is no remedy for it other than worship of God, of Saguneshwara. So if someone is in that condition, the only thing is rituals and worship to the creator, Saguna. But in our culture, people do not have, they do not live, integrating the creator in one's life's equation. So, and then you don't even have the possibility to say, just, do some worship to God, do some rituals, do prayers to God. I say, what God? It's not part of my culture. You understand? I'm suffering. And you tell me to be devoted to Saguneshwara. You understand? And then they rebel against that. There is no remedy except to worship to myself or to one of my representatives, such as Krishna or Sarasvati or any one of those, and be a devotee. Do prayers, meditate on your deity, ask for help. I through my representatives, will remove this dullness according to the prayers, the effort, the desire to overcome that pity condition, But it may be quickly or gradually, according to how thick this dullness is and how strong and intense is one's effort to break from that. It could happen slowly but surely, or in succeeding births. He who unreservedly surrenders himself to me with strong devotion is endowed with all the requisites necessary for self-realization. So, Nirguna Brahman, Tripura, he who worships me easily overcomes all the obstacles to self-realization. He or she who worships me as Nirguna Ishwara has already overcome most of the obstacles, therefore is here, face-to-face dealing with me, because I am the real source of moksha, liberation. On the other hand, the devotee who remains stuck up does not take refuge in me. The pure, intelligent, manipulating person is repeatedly upset by difficulties, so that his success is very doubtful. This person is repeatedly in mental difficulties, and spiritual elevation becomes very doubtful, to say the least. Therefore, all rishis, the chief requisite is one-pointedness, devotion to God as your own self. The devotee is the best of the aspirants. So you see how the devotion and the jnana merge together. So I have a burning desire to know myself. And then when I know that myself is Brahman, and Brahman is the only source of everything I'm seeking for, and then I become a devotee, because this is the love of my life. I no longer live loving the not self. I want to love the self, and the self is no longer an image or a deity, but it's my very self. This appointed devotion to myself is the devotion to oneself, which conduces one to self-recognition. This is the best aspirant. The one devoted to abstract consciousness excels every other seeker. So are you a devotee? Yes. So who is your deity or divinity? Or they say, so it's myself. And then the person says, so you are very arrogant. You are worshiping yourself. What an ego you has. So people are not going to understand that. But this is the highest devotee, because he's devoted to the most subtle of the subtle. The abstract, pure, limitless consciousness. Consummation lies in the discernment of the self as distinguished from the not self. So this is the most simple sadhana. In the universe, there are two principles operating. One is spirit, and the other is matter energy. So I need to discriminate the matter and energy as the not self, namarupas, and the self as the consciousness in which these namarupas appear, changing from moment to moment and disappear in due time. So consummation, which is the final nididhyasana, is this constant discernment or discrimination between satya and mithya, the self and the not self. Anything that appears to me is the not self. Therefore, I don't get excited running after anything that appears in the subtle world and in the physical material world around us. In the subtle world, the most seductive one is beautiful mental states, which is an object. Mind is energy, energy is subtle matter. And certain states needs to be discriminated, and this discrimination is very subtle, as Lin was saying, because the intellect, the mind, is a reflector. It shines with original consciousness. And when the thoughts are controlled by whatsoever means, consciousness is going to shine the human intellect, presenting the reflection of that which is the very essence of pure limitless consciousness. It manifests itself as this ananda, this peace and satisfaction and security experienced in profound meditation. And then one has to be there and say, okay, this is the real deal. But how so? How so? If it's something that appears before you and it's time-bound, cannot be the self. It is the not self, Lin, trying to deceive you. Maya is very smart. The self is present, confounded with the not self. Such confusion must cease, and awareness of the self must result as opposed to the ignorance in deep sleep. The self is experienced even now, but it's not discerned rightly, for it is identified with the not self. There is therefore endless suffering due to this misidentification of the self with the not self. How funny, huh? How could Maya bring about the self and mislead the self to identify with the not self, and then this self suffers? It's impossible. That's why we call media, is that which is not really real, but is available for experience. What is the experience? Suffering. To be a human being it's to suffer. For as long as you identified with the body and the mind. There is therefore endless suffering. The self is not hidden. It's there, shining in the human subtle body as the intellect. And it's always gleaming out as aham, the source of experiential consciousness. But this I is mistaken to be aham, body as me. Owning to this mysterious ignorance called Vidya. On this ignorance ceasing, the I is ascertained to be the true consciousness, the only reality alone, and that sets all doubts at rest. This is nothing else, this and only this and nothing else has been ascertained by the sages over the millennia, beginning at least, to be the very, very purpose of human birth. The guy just asked me, what is the purpose? Why we are here? It's for that. Thaumaturgic powers such as flying in space, all these mystical things, are all fragmentary and not worth a particle of self-realization. You want mystical, esoteric, going to other realms. This is nothing, okay? This is more samsara, subtle samsara, mystical samsara. For this is the unbroken and immortal bliss of the self in which all else is included. All superimposition occurs in me, I am conscious existence. And all these locus and realms and dimensions in which different qualities of experience may be available, higher and inferior, all of that happen in me. And this is the only understanding that's going to liberate the soul from suffering. Thaumaturgic powers are also a hindrance to self-realization, of course. Of what? What use are they? They are but simple acrobatic tricks. And there are a lot of people that are tricking people, trick seekers, even seekers that genuinely want freedom can be tricked by certain trickers, human beings, providing some shortcuts and a solution that's only possible with self-investigation and self-knowledge. The creator's status appears to a self-realized man to be only a riffle. What is a riffle?
I think it's a trifle, which means a little nothing, not amounts to anything.
Yeah, trifle. Okay. What use are these powers unless for wasting one's time? That's wonderful, I see people going and taking different roads, looking for this kind of things, this kind of different realms in which they believe they are going to experience something superior. It's a wasting of time. But how can you convince people that they are wasting time? We have to let them go. until more maturity is developed. There is no accomplishment such equal to self-realization, which is alone capable and ending all human misery, because it is the state of eternal bliss, eternal shanti, peace. Okay, so we're gonna stay here today. Today is Friday. We meet again soon, very soon, Monday. No? Yes. And then I'm going to be traveling Monday. And I will be beginning a seminar in São Paulo on Thursday. So next week we have only Monday's class. But then my seminar goes until Sunday, and then Monday I can give our class on Monday, although I will still be there in São Paulo.
Is this your seminar on Mandukya?
It's the third chapter on Mandukya Karika.
And you're using Swami P?
Yeah.
Not too much Sanskrit?
No, I mean, I have been translating, I mean, with my helpers, and cleaning up some of the Sanskrit. The Mandukya Karika is so beautiful. And strangely enough, the Karika is more beautiful than the Mandukya itself. Karika was written by Gaudapada, was written as analysis of the Mandukya. Mandukya is very short. So it's nicely structured, some Mandukyas, some Karikas of Gaudapada. And the third chapter is only Gaudapada verse, and the fourth is gonna be left for the next possible seminar I will do in Brazil. Too bad that is all in Portuguese, otherwise you would be able to enjoy it in online.
You were saying we were going to do Mandukya after Tripura. So are you going to be using Swami P or Swami Chinmayananda?
No, Swami P. Swami P is my guru. Yeah. Okay. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste. Thank you, my friends. We meet again this coming Monday. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Arlindo.
Thank you, Mark.
Goodbye.